very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Doc Watkins Show. I'm your host, Doc Watkins, and I'm joined by Mike Porter back there on the bass and Brandon Guerra on the drums. My special guest tonight is Emmy Award-winning comedian and former Saturday Night Live writer, Hugh Fink. We're going to get to the music in just a minute, but first, let's have a look at the Jazz Texas News. ABC is planning a quarantined edition of The Bachelorette to air in the fall. This is all part of the network's plan to stop the spread of herpes. Major League Baseball owners and players still cannot agree on a schedule for games to be played this season. The players' proposal is for 70 games, but the owners want only 60. So the compromise will be for baseball to have a one-game season. Then all the teams that win will compete in a round of one-inning playoffs, followed by the World Series, which will consist of one pitch being thrown, and whoever swings the hardest wins. According to the latest issue of National Geographic, while it's true that some male animals kill infants of their own species, many animal dads actually guard their nests, defend their dens, and play with their offspring. So happy Father's Day to all you lemurs, grizzly bears, lions, and other wild animals. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's new charity organization has suffered a recent setback when their application was denied due to clerical errors. Read all about this and more in the exciting new issue of Who Gives a Crap Weekly. A Japanese tech firm has developed a remote cheering app for smartphones that will fill the void of silence in empty sports stadiums, allowing fans to cheer and boo the games they're watching in real time. The app is so realistic, it will also recreate the sound of vendors yelling, "Cold beer, $9," a drunken fan dropping the F-bomb when a player misses a free throw, and the thunderous sound of the Houston Astros dugout banging on trash cans. According to the latest reports, NBA teams will be assigned their hotels in Disney World based on their record. The top-ranked teams like the Lakers and Bucks will stay at the Grand Destino Hotel. The second-seeded teams like the Pacers will stay at the Grand Floridian, and the teams with losing records like the Blazers and the Pelicans will stay at the La Quinta. Meanwhile, the last-place Cleveland Cavaliers are looking for any available Airbnb with a working shower and will be taking a Greyhound bus in from Tallahassee. As part of the quarantine agreement, all NBA players will be offered 24-hour room service, and nobody's more excited by this than the hotel busboys, who will be able to tell all their friends, "I just delivered a cheeseburger to Kawhi Leonard, who makes $34 million a year, and he tips me $4. And finally, a new groundbreaking study states that humans are not the only ones who have beliefs. Animals do too, although it is more difficult to prove than with humans. For example, on February 1st, crows and scrub jays did not believe there was a pandemic, but 2 weeks later, the birds started social distancing. Then by March 17th, the birds agreed to start wearing masks that only cover their beaks, but insisted on taking them off when tweeting. Currently, the crows and scrub jays self-quarantine in their nests only when they show symptoms, but otherwise they believe it's time to return to their normal social life of eating worms. And that's it for the Jazz Texas News. All right. Well, we're going to get to some music here now for you. We'd like to start off with an old American Songbook standard tune. This is a great old jazz standard entitled "There Is No Greater Love." Thank you so much for tuning in to the Doc Watkins Show tonight, everybody. That's Brandon Guerra back there on the drums. That's a tune called There Is No Greater Love. Thank you very much, everybody. We'd like to give a big shout out to our man behind the camera, Chris Zients. With Wizard Broadcasting. Thank you very much, Chris, for all that you do. We'd like to do a tune for you now that was made popular by the great Nat King Cole back in the 1940s. This is a tune called the Rim Fram Sauce. We got a lot of requests for this one over the last couple weeks, so we'd like to do it for you now. Here goes. Pork chops and bacon that won't awaken my appetite inside. Give me the Rim Fram sauce with the awesome thing with shafafa on the side. Well, you know that a fella has really got to eat, and a fella should eat right. 5 will get you 10. I'm gonna feed myself right tonight. I don't want fish cakes and rye bread. You heard what I said. Waiter, I want mine fried. Give me the Rim Fram sauce with the awesome thing with shafafa on the side. Go on, take it, Mike. I don't want French fried potatoes, red ripe tomatoes. I'm never satisfied. Give me the Rim Fram sauce with the awesome thing with shafafa on the side. I don't want pork chops and bacon, that won't awaken my appetite inside. Give me the Rim Fram sauce with the awesome thing with shafafa on the side. Well, you know that a fella, he's really got to eat, and a fella should eat right. 5 will get you 10. I'm gonna feed myself right tonight. I don't want fish cakes and rye bread. You heard what I said. Waiter, I want mine fried. Give me the Rim Fram sauce with the awesome thing with shafafa on the side. And if y'all don't have it, I guess I'll just take a check for the water. That's Mike Porter on the bass solo. That's an old Nat King Cole tune called the Rim Fram Sauce. Thank you very much, and thanks for joining, everyone. We want to give a big shout-out to Alamo Music, who's provided us with this wonderful brand-new Kawai grand piano for us to use during our shows during this time. So Kevin, Adriana, Alfred, the whole team at Alamo Music, we love you guys. Thank you very much. This next tune is a beautiful ballad by one of the great 20th century composers of all time, Duke Ellington. This one is one of my favorite songs ever written, entitled Sophisticated Lady. Here goes. A Sophisticated Lady by the incomparable Duke Ellington. Thank you very much. And if you're just joining us, welcome to the Doc Watkins Show. My name is Doc. That's Mike Porter on the bass. Mike Porter on the bass, Brandon Guerra on the drums. Welcome, everybody. Our special guest tonight is an Emmy Award-winning comedian and former Saturday Night Live writer. You might recognize from his numerous appearances on Comedy Central, Conan O'Brien, and Letterman. Last month, his topical song parody, Corona Lola, a coronavirus kinks parody, went viral, and you can see it on YouTube. From his home in Los Angeles, California, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Hugh Fink. Hugh, welcome
Doc
to the show.
Watson. This is so cool to be here, Doc, from Saturday Night Live and Letterman to the Doc Watson Show.
Yeah.
I love it. It's happening.
It only gets better and better and better. Welcome to the show, Hugh. We're here in San Antonio. Have you ever been to San Antonio before?
I have, and I want to point out to you that I love that you got this club called Jazz Texas, which is a really respected club. And you probably don't know this, but I recently played a club called Tejano, New York. So I guess that's probably your sister club. But to answer your question, yes, I do love San Antonio. And I got to give a shout out to those to Brandon and Michael behind you, those musicians. Hey, Brandon. Hey, Michael. You know, I haven't seen this many musicians wearing masks since I went to the Daft Punk concert. But I want to say that these guys are great. But it's interesting how they're kind of intimidating because they're always behind you, Doc, wearing suits. They never talk. It's like you got two guys from The Sopranos behind you on the show the whole time. Like, hey, Doc, you missed the arpeggio on the Duke Ellington song. We're going to have to take care of you.
We're going to have to take care of him.
But I do love San Antonio, which is where you're broadcasting live from. As I know San Antonio, I call it gateway to Elmendorf. But it's one of my favorite towns.
But it says here, Hugh, now if the dossier is correct, that you are originally from Indiana. Is that right?
That is true. But, you know, Doc, even though I live in L.A. now, I'd like to think that my Midwestern upbringing has kept my values. I'm, like, not one of these Hollywood guys. I'm very, like, down to earth, which is why I wanted to show you my Emmy here tonight, because that's what it's all about.
You're so down to earth?
Exactly.
Hey, backstage crew, can we bring our Emmys up here to... No, we don't have any? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I was
well, there
compare,
you go. Well, you know, I just always resent when guests say they're Emmy nominated, but I feel like, okay, I can top that. I'm Emmy Award winning. Boom.
That's true.
Yeah. But San Antonio is a great town. I've not been there in a while. Last time I played some colleges in your town. But one thing I noticed, I went in, like Texas has its own expressions for saying things that the rest of the country doesn't say, right? Yeah. I went to this place in San Antonio called Game Over. It's like a video game store, right? And I went in there and I said, hi, I'm looking for a Call of Duty 2. And the girl behind the counter goes, oh, you need to check the ass whipping section. Now, I've never heard, like, and then I looked, it was like, literally, that was the sections. Like drama, comedy, ass whipping.
That was a real section?
Yes. And then one of the coolest expressions I learned when I was in Texas was, there you go. I didn't know that expression before, but Texans use it in a unique way. Like, did you attempt to kill this man? Well, did you ask him? Yeah, according to him, you stabbed him 11 times. Well, there you go.
Well, there you go. But
there you go.
So you're in Los Angeles. You're originally from Indiana.
Indiana.
And you spent some time down here in Texas. But on top of that, you're actually a classically trained violinist. My wife's a classically trained violinist, and I hear that you're not my wife, but you're a classically trained violinist as well.
I am, which was sort of ironic being in Indiana because it's not known. You know, it's more like Texas in the sense that country music's very popular there, and it was frustrating because as a kid I'd play like an unaccompanied Bach partita, and then people in the audience would go, "Do you know Devin went down to Georgia?" Like, no.
That happens to us down here too.
Now, we had a classical, we had a country radio station, Doc, that became classical, but they didn't fire any of the DJs. So it created a lot of problems. It'd be like, you're listening to Rossini's overture, La Gatta Ladra, which is Italian for all my exes live in Texas.
That's about the worst. That's the worst and the best radio station I could imagine. I think I'd have that on the dial all the time.
You know, Baroque music and George Strait. That's an odd combination.
Yeah, right. Pretty much the same thing. I hear George Strait was heavily influenced by Vivaldi and Bach and Handel and those guys.
I think that's right. Yes.
I think
exactly.
that's. So you're a big. It says here in the dossier. You're also you're classically trained violinist. You're a big sports fan as well. And do you have favorite sports
I love
teams?
Sports. Absolutely. Well, baseball is my favorite sport. And when I was a kid, my dad was my Little League coach.
Uh-huh.
And he had me traded for $50 cash and a Puerto Rican kid to be named later. A little frustrating. But I go to games here in LA, Doc, and I don't like this trend at stadiums. They're like on the Jumbotron, they'll have public service announcements. So I was at a Dodger game, and it came up on the screen, it said, for every 9 innings of baseball, 63 men die of prostate cancer. And, you know, my reaction is probably what yours was, too, was like, baseball really is slow. They got to speed this game up.
That's a good one.
I once went to a Texas Rangers game in Arlington. You've been to that stadium, Doc?
I've never been to that stadium, no.
This is when the team wasn't very good. So I called up the box office and I go, what time's the game today? They go, what time can you get here? 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock? Just show up.
That's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah.
So Hugh, what's your worst, as a comic, what's your worst bombing moment? I'm fascinated with bombing.
Are you? Well, one of my first gigs, believe it or not, was in Midland, Odessa, Texas.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll never forget, I try to get material, you know, I visit towns like San Antonio and I write down stuff, but I was walking around Midland, Odessa, and I saw a little sign that said, burgers, fries, shakes, bait. So I went up to the window and I said, I'll have a cheeseburger and a chocolate shake. And the guy goes, do you want night crawlers on that? So I went on stage and did that, but I got heckled in Midland. I was wearing parachute pants because those were very popular at the time.
Uh-huh.
And some guy yells out, hey, son, down here in Texas, we don't wear breeches like that. And I just looked at him and I said, really? Well, where I come from, we don't use the word breeches. So touche.
But you really got offered night crawlers on a hamburger?
Son, down here in Texas.
It's the bit. True. Yeah, I get.
It's the bit.
It's our little
You
secret.
understand. Exactly. But you know, Doc, you're a sports fan. Do I understand right? You like sports.
Sure. Yeah. I like it all. Yeah. I'm not a golf guy.
Not a golf guy, right?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're proudest of in Los Angeles, we have, I think, the best announcer in the history of sports.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite announcer? Is that your favorite guy?
Well, Vin Scully. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a legend.
Yeah.
He's the Dodgers. He was the Los Angeles Dodgers play-by-play guy for like 60 years, and he retired a few years ago. But the only thing is, you know, he was almost 90 years old. Vin was starting to do the play-by-play of the baseball games, but also telling you insignificant facts about World War II. It'd be like, now pitching for the Dodgers, Hideki Kuroda on the mound. Kuroda, a native of Osaka, Japan, with a sneaky delivery, which reminds me, another sneaky move was when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I did not see that coming at all. Here's the pitch. It's a line drive up the middle. He surrendered that pitch faster than France surrendered to the Nazis, which, of course, led to the German invasion of Poland on July 18th, which happens to be Clayton Kershaw bobblehead night here at Dodger Stadium.
How could there be any other announcer that would ever?
He's the greatest. I can't tell if Brandon, who's wearing a mask, if he's bowled over with laughter or if he's having trouble breathing. I'm actually worried. You okay, Brandon?
Well, we're gonna have to check him out in a minute.
All right,
here.
Check him out.
Hugh, you're the best, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really, really appreciate having you. Thanks for all the good times, man.
I love your show, Doc. It's fantastic. A shout out my niece just had a baby Remy, and they're watching. So how do you
Remy.
like that? You got fans of baby Remy. We got fans from all generations.
Oh, right on. Well, congratulations, you guys, and take good care of that baby.
Luck to come back on, Doc. You take care, too. Love the show.
Anytime, Hugh. Thank you so much. Goodbye, my friend.
Bye.
That's Hugh Fink, everybody. Hugh, thanks so much for joining us on the show. We're going to do a song now that's one of our favorites. This is a tune by George Gershwin entitled But Not For Me. Big shout out to Chris Zients back there.
Science!
That's But Not For Me by George Gershwin. Thank you very much, everybody. This next tune goes out to Tom and Barbara Blair out in Uvalde, Texas. Very good friends of ours, and this is an old Oscar Peterson tune called D&E. That's Brandon Guerra on the drums, Mike Porter on the bass. That's D&E by the Oscar Peterson Trio. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's that time of the program. We realize that a lot of you guys are stuck at home and trying to do the best you can to stay entertained. You've watched all the Netflix you can, and now you're turning to things like board games and other fun activities to keep you occupied. Well, here at Jazz Texas, we've decided to come up with our own board game, which you can play along with right here at home. So, without further ado, here's the board game. Now, you know how the board game works. We pick two famous people who are very boring. We compare them both, and then I get to decide who's the biggest bore. So tonight on the board game, who's more boring? Louis Pasteur or Pete Sampras? Well, on the one hand, Louis Pasteur was a scientist who's known for his breakthroughs in the prevention of diseases. Pasteur is most remembered for inventing a process to stop milk from making people sick. This process of stopping people from getting sick, unfortunately, doesn't apply to listening to the music of Maroon 5. Louis Pasteur is the father of 19th century germ theory. In the 1800s, people weren't aware that germs can cause illnesses, and Pasteur discovered that washing your hands is essential to stop the spreading. This came as news to many people in the 19th century and to other people in the past few months. Louis Pasteur is most famous for developing the process to sanitize milk known as pasteurizing, which means that if I had made this discovery before Pasteur did, we'd all be saying that the milk had been Watkinsized. That's a thinker. On the one hand, Pete Sampras is a former tennis champion who won 14 Grand Slam singles titles. I've never played or watched tennis, but I have ordered 14 Grand Slam breakfasts at Denny's, which contains milk that's pasteurized. In the late 1990s, Pete Sampras dated actress Kimberly Williams Paisley, and the rest is history. Pete will be remembered as the greatest tennis player of all time, and Kimberly Williams Paisley will be remembered as, actually, no one remembers her. Pete Sampras won many tennis tournaments, but he never won the French Open, which might be linked to the fact that Louis Pasteur was French. However, what the two men do share in common is that Pasteur is associated with milk, and Sampras' style of playing tennis, which wasn't very exciting, was milk toast. It's a tough call, honestly, but if you had to pick who bores you the most, Louis Pasteur or Pete Sampras, the correct answer is Pete Sampras. And thanks for playing the board game. Back to the music now. Folks, we're going to start out, we're going to continue on with a beautiful love song by the great Victor Young, one of my favorite songs of all time, When I Fall in Love. That's When I Fall in Love by Victor Young. Thank you very much, everybody. We've got time to do just one more tune for you this evening before it's time to say goodnight. We want to thank you so much for tuning in and let you know that we're back on Tuesday, as usual, every Tuesday and Friday, live streaming here from Jazz Texas for the time being at 8 o'clock Texas time. This next Tuesday, we have legendary saxophonist Jerry Weldon, who's been Harry Connick's, Harry Connick Jr.'s right-hand man for the last 25 years, and we're very, very excited to have Jerry on the show. We're going to talk a little bit. He's going to play a little saxophone for you, and so make sure and tune in on Tuesday night. It's going to be a really fun night for us. We want to give a big shout-out once again to Chris Science back there.
Science!
Wizard Broadcasting. And we'd like to close out with one last tune. This is from an old Disney movie from long ago, the first ever full-length feature Disney film back in the 1930s. This is a tune called Someday My Prince Will Come. We'd like to swing out on it for you. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see y'all next time. Thank you. that someday my prince will come. Thank you so very much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for our show tonight. It's been such a pleasure to be with you all this evening, and such a fun time to be up here with my buddies playing music with Brandon and Mike. And so thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next Tuesday with special guest saxophonist Jerry Weldon. Looking forward to it. Until then, stay safe and be well, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Good night.